have a dream, oh, I have a dream. Red, white, and blue, fly free, fly free. I believe, oh, I believe. Will you dream with me?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Changing Times. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m., we are live on the Axe Media Group in Springfield, Missouri. Today is a nice day. It's going to be around 85 degrees in southwest Missouri, and some of us got a little rain, and some of us didn't. But it's going to be a great day. This is show number 2, Don. 22. I don't know why I said 2. 22. We've done 22 weeks of Changing Times, discussing social issues. And we are so excited to still be here. We've got a tremendous guest. I think this is the champion of being a difference maker. And Don, you always say being the change. Both of those things are so important in this world today. And so we are so happy to have our guest today. And actually, we've got the prettier of the two. So we had the husband that we invited, and Ethan Forhetz, and then we have Sara Forhetz. So we are so happy today. But before we get started, I want to make sure that people know that not everybody can watch this show at 10 a.m. in the morning, and we realize that. It's a 40-minute show. It goes by fast. But the good news is you can watch this show anytime of the day, night, weekend, whatever. All our shows are categorized in a library, and you'll see this show this afternoon, and you can watch it from then on. We have a lot of people that go back, and once they discover us, they'll watch 2 or 3 shows at a time. Pastor Hosey Ballou, commissioner on the west side of Christian County, my counterpart, he watches 2 or 3 at a time and catches up. He was really interested in John Wilson, and Beth Wilson would light the way. So you can do that. And one of the things that you can really help us with is be sure and share this show. If you like this show, be sure and let your friends know, let your family know, let your coworkers know. When you go to church on Sundays, be sure and share this message, this show, because this show is really about you guys. We just want to do whatever you want us to do as a type of show. So you can send us Facebook messages. We really appreciate those. We had several last week, and we appreciate that. So send us a message. Let us know what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to see, and we'll try to accommodate that. And also, before we get started, I did this last week for the first time. Jim Whining, our executive CEO, told us that we had run a little short in August. I realize this is the first day of September. It's kind of hard to believe, but run a little short on donations for some reason in the month of August for Axe Ministry Group. This is a worldwide, non-denominational group that does so many great things all around the world. And even though this is just being broadcast out of Springfield, Missouri, people are hearing this all over this country and other places. And so we would appreciate that if you like this type of show, and there's other shows that we put on here in Springfield, if you could help us, there's 2 ways. You can be like my wife and like to write a check out. And so, by the way, we're going to write you a check out and send a Convoy of Hope. But 4166 West Kearney is the address, Springfield, Missouri. And what was that zip code? 65803. 65803. Just make it out to Axe Ministry Group, and you can make a donation. Also, if you're like a lot of people today, you can just go on our Axe Media Group's Facebook page, and then you can scroll down and find donations, hit donations, and then you can do PayPal. And so a lot of people do PayPal today. And then before we end this show today, I want to make sure that we find time, because I'm looking for a lot of people in this country and around the world that can financially make a donation to Convoy of Hope, because they could sure use the money as they sure spend the money to help hundreds of thousands of people, probably millions of people around the world. Because every time there's a catastrophe, and we're going to talk about several of them today, they are there to help. Okay. And so I'm Lynn Morris.
And I'm Dawn Blackard.
And Don, I tell you what, I'm going to let you start it off today. I didn't cough through that first part, and so far so good.
Yep, Lynn's got some allergies with the rain and the season that's going on. So, well, Sarah, I am so excited that you've joined us today, and I want to call you Sister Sarah.
That's great. Call me Sister Sarah.
The reason I want to do that is in our church, when people are working for the Lord and they're preaching the gospel and all of that, they don't have to be ordained to, preach the gospel. And so we like to call those people sister or brother. So, Sister Sarah.
Thanks. I like it. I like the ring.
And I think it's a very earned title because people know you in front of the, the television and they know all of that. But I've seen a different side of you over the past 2 years and just being kind of on the back row of hearing you preach. And so we had a event that was taking place once a week at our church, and we were just feeding the neighborhood, like really feeding hungry people. And someone asked you if you would come in and bring the word, and you're like, absolutely. And the whole group was like, this girl that has all of this going on is going to come down to the north side of Springfield and bring the word. And it just meant a lot to the group and to the people there that heard it. And then there was an event that took place that was private for a lot of women who were in recovery or who had been abused and were in different shelters. And to me, the people who got up to preach in front of the thousands, they did great. That was wonderful. But your message was so hit home for all the girls sitting at our table. And something really great happened that night that you're not aware of, but I was sitting at a table with a mother and a grandmother, and the mother had just gotten out of recovery. And her daughter came by and slipped her a piece of paper because she was in another home. She was in another group home that said, I love Jesus, you love Jesus, everything's going to be okay, with this like beautiful picture. And then you're up there preaching to these 3 generations in a room that had been hurting, that had turned it around. So Sister Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
You have a great YouTube presence that people may not know about you. So if you have not subscribed to your channel, please go out and do that. You have so many wonderful sermons down there that people can feed off of. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, I try to upload them when I know they're being recorded, but like you said, so often I feel like I'm speaking, in the back room, so to speak. So oftentimes they are not recorded, but if I know it's being recorded, I will try to get it. And now I'm like, yes, I have to start uploading more of those. So I will do that.
I've been a huge fan of Convoy of Hope since I was a little girl. I mean, rooted in Springfield 4 generations, you can't escape all the goodness that Convoy has done. But I've also been a fan of you and your husband. So when you guys all teamed up together, it's just like the jackpot over there now.
So it's been quite a transition. I mean, it's interesting because this, with Hurricane Ida happening right now in Louisiana, we feel like we are back in our wheelhouse because it feels like breaking news. And just to feel like for the first time that we are part of the solution, and we get to have that face-to-face interaction with the recipients of Convoy's kindness has been just remarkable for us and very humbling because, I love, the place for media to get the word out, to get, information to people. But with all that's happening in the world, and it seems like everything has an agenda, unfortunately, you can start to feel like part of the problem and like you're stirring the pot. And so to be on the other side now and say, not only are we going to tell people that this is happening, but we're going to go there and meet them, in arguably the darkest days of their life has been really awesome.
Well, I know Lynn's going to ask you some questions, but I just challenge everybody that's watching this that you can be part of that solution too. And that's by teaming up with Convoy of Hope. And it's so easy. You'll see there on the banner how to go to convoyofhope.org. They have a great donate button, and no amount is too small and no amount is too big. We'll take it all. But if you want to be part of the solution that's going on, then go to convoyofhope.org and give your donation. And Lynn, I'll turn it over to you.
Very good. I tell you what, that's just great. That's a great start. And, Sarah, I think, I can't imagine, you guys are so good. You and Ethan are so good on television news, but how gratifying, think about it. Everybody has a job and everybody's job is important. We all do different things, but sometimes you don't get to do a job that's so gratifying and just makes you feel good inside. And obviously your job helping all these people in despair, and you guys bring hope to people all around the world. And I believe that we need more hope now than ever for lots of reasons. And so I just thank you guys so much for what you're doing. And so, yeah, I want to go ahead and start with just a few questions and let the people out there know the scope, just the wide scope of what you guys do. So obviously we've got Hurricane Ida that caused a lot of damage. I was noticing that this morning that, it seemed like the levees did hold. And in most cases, it did hold. But unfortunately, it forced the water out on both sides of the levees. I mean, those levees are long, miles long, but it forced it out. So there's still a lot of devastation. And of course, the wind destroyed a lot of homes, a lot of businesses. A lot of people now are really, really struggling. And I know Ethan, your husband, and I think, what was it, 17 vehicles or something like that?
I think, like 19 of the emergency vehicles, and then just truckloads of supply coming in still.
So, I mean, they're gone. They were leaving over the weekend. And they're going to be there. They're already helping people and giving people hope and keeping people alive and doing whatever that needs to be done. And they're doing dangerous work too. I want to point this out for Nixa, Missouri, the people around Southwest Missouri, for their electrical people to work in public utilities, city utilities. They've taken 2 trucks, 4 guys out. They've donated their time. And there's people all over the country doing that, but nobody is bigger and better than Convoy of Hope. And so what do you see about not just Louisiana, but now it's Mississippi and Alabama, some of the other areas.
Right. So, yeah. And still in Haiti as well. I mean, and then helping some of the Afghan refugees who are making their way here, who need food and water and supplies. I mean, it's incredible for me to consider whenever I see you're talking about the magnitude and the scope of so many different things, droughts and famines and disasters all over the world, that just from watching, your TV news, like, you don't even know what you don't know. And then you see, oh my goodness, we are responding all over the place to all different sorts of things, man-made disasters, natural disasters. But yeah, in Louisiana, I feel like that's kind of our first rodeo, if you will, for Ethan and me on this side of Convoy, because we had covered it for a long time from a news perspective.
Right.
But now here we are. And, I talked to Ethan as he was on his way down. Obviously, transportation is difficult because there's power lines over the roads and trees and flooding down all over the main thoroughfares. But to watch how they just pivot when they need to. So when I talked to him a couple days ago, they were actually taking as many supplies as they could from the big trucks, putting them into a smaller truck so they could better navigate and get to where they needed to be. And then they would go, pick up more supply as they needed it from where they had parked. But I thought, that's awesome. I mean, and it sounds so simple, but until you're in the inner workings of it, you don't see how hard the people are working to help others. And just the caliber, if that's the right word, of people, I'm like, man, I always would have told you that I was generous. And then you meet someone and it's just a challenge to really be generous. I'm like, man, I thought I was. So it's neat to learn from those of us who are, older and wiser and who've been doing this for a lot longer, and just to watch how they operate organizationally, but also even personally.
Wow. Well, and you mentioned Haiti. And, we talked about our friend Daryl Tonsing, who's a missionary for Haiti. He had the gospel for Haiti. And I know Janet and I donated money several times to help with the water well and things that they were doing for their people in Haiti. And now he's got a new gospel for the nations, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. We all go to the same church, James River. And so he's doing great things. And you mentioned Haiti. I don't think this last earthquake, I mean, it was devastating, obviously, when you have these impoverished areas. And that's what Don and I were talking about before you got here. It just seems like to me that a lot of this terrible stuff that happens in areas where we don't have too many good things going on anyway.
Right.
And the structures aren't as strong. The buildings seem to crumble easier. Things seem to happen, and it just keeps knocking people off their feet. And if you didn't have people like you, Convoy of Hope, to try to pull people back up, I don't know what would happen.
Yeah.
I don't know what would happen. So you're still involved in Haiti.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I have been to Haiti. I went in 2014. That's where I met Daryl.
Okay.
So we actually met on the ground in Haiti, and I was covering it as a journalist at that point. But that was 4 years after their 2010 earthquake. And you would have thought that the earthquake had only happened about a month prior, when in fact it had been 4 years.
Right.
Because of what you said. I mean, it's already, weak. The infrastructure, so much about it, just the difficulty of life. And to Dawn's point before the show started, I did not know she did 2 tours in Iraq. That's amazing to me.
Right.
I love that, because you're putting feet to your faith. You're saying, I believe so much in helping and loving people on purpose that I'm willing to go. And so that's amazing. But yeah, to see, Daryl basically sell a business, sell off everything he has, go to Haiti. And then here I am as the journalist covering it, and kind of the work that they're doing over there. And you're like, oh my gosh, like they cannot catch a break.
Right.
I mean, it is insult to injury, but to know that God has not forgotten them. God still has a plan and a purpose for their life. And that includes people, and it includes the body functioning in the role that they can function. And so whether it's a missionary like Daryl is, or Convoy of Hope that's coming in after the storm, or a soldier who's willing to say, let me be used in any way possible, even at great risk and at great cost. I mean, to me, that sounds like, taking up your cross, laying it down, surrendering it all. I mean, to consider the cost, which is what Jesus instructs us to do.
Right.
Sometimes in our American Western mindset, that's actually really hard to do.
Right.
Because you've never really paid a cost. I mean, I just think of the Afghani Christians right now. I was reading an article yesterday about 12 of them who are hidden away in a basement. And one of them is staying awake 24/7 praying, because the Taliban is literally on their front porch saying, if I see you, I will behead you,
Right.
And it's like they signed up for Christianity, understanding the cost. Well, when I signed up for Christianity and said with my words, I understand the cost, do I really understand it? I mean, I don't know that I do. I want to. I mean, my heart's desire is to. But man, if we can come and be the hands and the feet and the supply, that's amazing. I mean, and that is the call of the Christian life, for us individually, and then, churches, corporations, whoever can get behind that. I mean, we've been given so much.
Well, Sarah, you're exactly right. I mean, I think most of us that have strong faith, we really have not been tested. And we really need to pray for these people over in Afghanistan and other places in the world, because it seems like Christians now are targets. And we have to be stronger, and we have to actually show our faith, and it could mean that your life. But I think that, when I look at church on Sunday, and I don't know what you thought about the Sunday before last when we had the college students back, but we go to second service, and I saw all those college kids, all those young kids, and they were from James River University. They were from Evangel. They were from Missouri State, Drury, just all over the area. And I look at those students and the high school students, but I was looking at the college students, and, we hear this on TV. We hear it all the time saying that, the churches are dying out, the attendance is down, just negative things, negative on the news. It may be that way somewhere in this country. I'm not disputing that some big cities or someplace has a failure of what they need to know about Christ, but I don't believe so in Southwest Missouri. I don't believe so in a lot of parts of our country still. I think that God is growing, the church is growing, people understand what time it is and what they need to do. It makes me feel really good when I see those young people in church. I know that that's our future leaders. It's certainly not the ones that necessarily don't know God. They hopefully will know God someday. But it makes me feel good when I see all those young people. What do you think about all those young people going to our church?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. regardless, of where they're going, if they are plugged in to the body of believers, wherever that might be, I mean, it's a beautiful thing because culturally, it is not their norm. In the 60s, so many people went to church, whether they had a deep relationship, it was the culturally appropriate thing to do. And so they did. And now it's not so much. It's not so much. In fact, there was a recent study that said 18 to 29-year-olds say that their preferred religion is none. So no religion, and that's perfectly culturally acceptable. So they're already, breaking their cultural norm. And I mean, my kids are 8, 10, and 12, but I'm not scared for their future. I'm fully confident that the Lord called them to this time and this season. But right now, to be a steward of their spiritual upbringing and knowing that if we can train them up in the ways of the Lord, they will not depart from it. And just believing that word is relevant for me as it is for, all of the people who are saying, man, we're trying to raise up our kid, but look at culture. And they're going to stand out like a sore thumb. But guess what? They were born for such a time as this. It's okay. There are no accidents. Children are a blessing from the Lord. And just to walk confidently saying, hey, I know your life is going to be very different than mine, and that your culture already looks extremely different than mine did. And, it's funny because we're the same age. I don't feel that old, but yet
you guys are young.
Well, it's interesting though, because how different we are, it seems, than, people who are maybe 20 years younger than us, like the college students right now. That's wild because it is so drastically different. But yes, to be set apart and to understand that you are operating counterculturally and being okay with that.
Well, I tell you what, I agree with you, Sarah. And, I'm going to tell the audience that one of the things I think that parents, and if the parents don't take their children to church and introduce them to the Lord, then I think the grandparents need to do that. Jan, I've talked about that I think it's extremely important. If we can have that foundation that you talked about as a young person growing up, they're going to have a much better life, I believe, as they get older. And that's because they already know Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. And they're just going to be that much better equipped for life, I believe. Now, not to say that you can't be 60, 70, 80 years old and find Christ. You can do that. And I hope you do. Before it's too late. We never know when that last day is. And so that's why it's so important. But let's go back to Afghanistan. So that's a dangerous country. Obviously, we've got all kinds of rebel people over there that don't even like each other. And you got the Taliban that's in control of the entire country. But now you've got ISIS-K, and you've got other groups that are just really bad groups. And I guess they're going to kill each other, and we'll see what happens. But I mean, without going through a lot of secrets, I mean, you got to be pretty protective, but you're still trying to help people with food and water and hope and things like that, right?
Right. I mean, absolutely. Because like you said, you have to have hope. Those people have to have hope. And the reality is there is hope. There is hope for a better tomorrow. So most of them, it's as they are coming here. Now, we do have some strategic partners, in Europe and different parts, which is amazing. I don't even know all the inner workings because it is a sensitive area, but there are lots of sensitive areas. And we can still offer hope and kindness to people. I mean, in Romans, we will know them. They will be drawn to repentance by kindness, shown through people. Ultimately through the Lord, but it's through people, his children. And so, we partner with all kinds of people. Not everyone is a follower of Jesus. In fact, many of them are not, but there's still hope given for tomorrow because God works in mysterious ways and not always through believers necessarily. In my own life, I have received good gifts ultimately from the Father, but through people who are not necessarily believers.
Well, I tell you what, and again about Afghanistan, I know we've got such a split country between whether they think one way or think another way. And we've got a lot of people right now that are very upset. We look at polling numbers and, over 80% of the people, 82, maybe 84% of the people don't think that this withdrawal was handled correctly, it doesn't really make any difference anymore. It's done. Now, what I'm really worrying about, and I encourage people to pray about, is the fact that we still have a lot of Americans over there. It's disputed how many we have. I think we've got at least 24 students still over there trapped somewhere. I say they're trapped. I don't know. Some people say they're stranded. I don't think President Biden likes that word stranded, but I mean, they're over there. And then you've got, like you said, you've got a lot of Christians over there, Afghanistani Christians. You've got a lot of women over there that's all of a sudden, unfortunately, they're going to lose all their rights. I fear for them. I fear for the children, the innocent people that, and we got a lot of dual citizens, Afghani United States citizens. It's going to be, I think, several more months before we ever figure out whether we can get all those people back or not.
Right.
And it's very delicate. And that's why Convoy of Hope provides that hope and food and shelter for people that's going to be going through that. Is there a country that, do you have any boundaries that Convoy of Hope couldn't take care of?
I mean, honestly, it's through relationship that so many people have made just over the years. I feel like 99% of the good work that they do comes through relationship. I mean, that might be with one person in some foreign country and them making a phone call and making something happen. It's you hear of the need and then they say, can we do something about that? Is it possible? And I know in many countries it's a lot harder. So sometimes the answer is no, but the willingness to seek it out and say, what can we do? Mother Teresa, the founder would tell you this quote, like she says, not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something.
Right.
Do something, whether you're, watching now, I mean, do something, even if it's not for Afghanistan, do something for your neighbor, do something, be kind to people,
Right.
And while we're on the topic of doing something, you said, some people go like boots on the ground. Some people send through their giving. We set up a text number specifically for Ida because it's going to be one of those long lasting responses.
Okay.
And it is 68828. So if you text the word Ida, as in Hurricane Ida, to 68828, you can make a donation to Convoy to help those people in New Orleans and now Mississippi as well.
Very good. We'll also mention that again next week, and we'll try to do that for a while. I know this is an ongoing project. It's not going to solve the problem overnight.
Right.
And so you're going to continue to do that. Well, so Don, we were talking about how many volunteers. You want to ask Sarah how many volunteers they have in their organization?
Well, we were looking up on the website, and it is very impressive with the amount of people that have gotten behind Convoy of Hope. And we need people, just to say on the donation stuff, we need Christians to be bolder, and we need them to be bolder with their checkbooks. And I know Lynn would agree. I mean, if this is the time that you could really step up and make a difference, that's what you guys need to do. But I saw that you guys had, and maybe this number isn't correctly, but you've inspired over 677,000 volunteers to get involved.
So often what we do, like for instance, we'll just take Louisiana. Instead of bringing a group of volunteers down, because that's costly, and then where do you house them? How do you feed them in a town whose infrastructure is, in a hurricane zone and currently underwater? We use volunteers from local places where we operate. So we train up like what we would call a lead volunteer to mobilize people in that community who perhaps were not impacted, but who want to help. So they live in the area already. Oftentimes it's through churches. So what that looks like is calling, a pastor and saying, hey, your church is right outside the disaster zone. Do you have volunteers? Well, yeah, we have 100 people every week who like to volunteer. Great. Can you send them to this location to help us with a distribution event? And so it's neat because, they give them a little Convoy of Hope t-shirt or apron or something. But they're really there helping us because we couldn't do it without them.
Well, that's awesome. And you just think about how many thousands and thousands of volunteers you've got to have all over the world. And so you're right. You couldn't bring them from Springfield, Missouri, where the headquarters is. You couldn't bring them all there. So you're going to get them and you're going to solicit them, and people are going to kindly volunteer and help. You know, if I lived in Louisiana, because we had a lake house down at Table Rock for many years and a couple of nice boats. You know, I'd like to do volunteer. I'd love to go boating. I'd take one of my boats out and I'd be going around with all that water and rescuing people.
Right.
Rescuing people and dogs and pets and things. I mean, that would be awesome. That'd be a great job for me, riding my boat around all day long, all night, trying to find people.
Right.
So everybody's going to do something different, you know, and not everybody has the same talents. But together, you can make a difference. And so you guys are certainly difference makers. There's another question that I wanted to talk about. We were, you know, when I talked about listening to Hal Donaldson a few years ago up in Jefferson City as a state representative, I was so impressed with his talk. And but maybe tell the listeners a little bit about his philosophy, how the two brothers got started. I mean, how did that, because did that start out in Sacramento, California?
Yes.
I remembered that it didn't start in Missouri.
Right. They were in California where they were raised. And their father died when they were young. The boys were still young. And a family took them in to a single wide trailer that was already full of them, you know, the couple and their kids. And basically, from the way that he tells it, there was just an officer who said, "Who's going to take these 4 kids?" And took a minute, you know, that moment of silence where everyone's looking like, how are we going to do this? But like Don said, you say, you know what, I'm going to give until it hurts in some cases, because I believe that God's going to provide. And, you know, they raise their hand, just friends of the family, not family of the family. And those 4 boys lived in that trailer, and, you know, they were on food stamps. They had just a rough go, as far as by an American standard, a rough go, you know, in poverty.
Right.
And so coming out of poverty, he was thinking, okay, I'm going to get an education and make some money. And he was studying out in California. Actually, he was studying journalism, which I love because he is a heck of a storyteller. And so now when I write stories, I get all nervous. I'm like, I know Hal's going to read this. Like, it needs to be good. But he just was he was essentially hired as a writer to go do stories about, you know, different parts of the world. He winds up in India and literally meets Mother Teresa and has an interview with her. You know, she's amazing. She's inspiring.
Right.
She's the real deal.
Right.
And then she says, you know, now I have a question for you. What are you doing to help the poor and the suffering? And he says, you know, I don't want to lie to Mother Teresa and get struck by lightning. So he said nothing. And that's when she said, well, everyone can do something. And by the time he got back to California, he had just such a check in his spirit to say, I need to help people. Like, even though I have all these goals to get myself out of poverty, like, what can I do with what I have? And they would fill up the truck bed and just take groceries. And now their little, you know, slogan is a driving passion to feed the world.
Right.
Because without food, it's hard to do anything else, you know? And so their humility, his wife, Dory, her humility. I mean, sometimes she's like, can we go to lunch? Yes, absolutely. I will clear my schedule. Just because to hang out and to be around them is to learn, you know? And I just want to soak it in, take notes, and live it, because they are the real deal. And, you know, being a leader through 2020, I mean, I only had to lead 3 kids, and I thought that was extremely challenging. And so hats off to an organization that is still leading hundreds of employees, thousands of volunteers, meeting people's needs, learning how to pivot whenever the way that you've always operated is no longer an option, and just getting, you know, me kind of getting that back row seat to say, wow, like, this is a gift. Like, we have been given a gift to be able to come alongside and work at a place that's truly changing the world.
Well, it certainly is. And you guys, so what is your and Ethan's title?
My title is lead reporter and national spokesperson. And so we have not really returned to the field yet. Like, the reporters of us. I mean, obviously our critical staff, they are still operating in all of the countries. You know, a lot of times we use native people to those countries. So our team in Haiti, who works there all the time, year round, I mean, they are native Haitians. Anyway, so they're obviously still working and still providing and still serving. I haven't really traveled with Convoy much yet just because of COVID. So I am learning my national spokesperson role, though. I think in the last, starting with the earthquake in Haiti, which was what, 3 Saturdays ago now?
3.
Since then, with that, and then, you know, Ida, I've probably done close to 50 different interviews.
Wow.
So I'm like, hey, look at me. I'm living up to my title. And Ethan, he is national spokesperson. So we share that role. And then he is what they call vice president of public engagement. I don't know what that means. He doesn't know what it means, but he's like, if you were to ask him, he would say, I think I'm a PR person. So I think he's a PR person.
Well, I think you guys both are definitely the best for your titles.
Thanks.
And it's just absolutely, I think that you're going to excel. The love of God, of helping people, doesn't she just kind of
exude it?
It just comes out. And so I applaud you. We've watched you on TV. You've come and interviewed me at times and things like that. You know, I really appreciate you. I respect you and Ethan and everybody that's in the organization. So there's several brothers. Is there 2 or 3 brothers?
2 or 3 brothers. I've only met, I think 2 of them. So
yeah, I think I've met 2 of them too.
Yeah.
I think there's actually maybe 3 brothers.
I think there's 3. Yeah, there's 3.
Yeah.
But what an incredible family. I mean,
yeah. Well, I tell you what, just, you know, God put them in the right place and actually situated Hal to be with Mother Teresa. I mean, they saw all this stuff. It happens for a reason.
Right.
Nothing's just accidental, I don't believe.
Oh, no. God's weaving it all together. And Lynn and I talked, I mean, to think of the vision that they had to look 30 years later and to see that they are really feeding the world and all of this is multiplying and God's hands is in everything is just truly incredible.
Well, yeah. And so let's talk one more time about making sure people, if you want to make a donation, they can make.
Well, one, you can go to that text number that they have set up, which is text IDA to 68828. Or you could go to convoyofhope.org. And, you know, again, we just challenge you guys to challenge yourself. You know, there's so much in the world that we can't control, but we can control what we do. We can control how we respond. And that's what I encourage everybody to do today is to make a gift. And, you know, thinking of Convoy, I wrote down a couple of things. Convoy is hope in action. That's how I think of them. And they truly are a champion of hope. And that's what the world needs more of. And we're going to need more of it to come. I don't feel like this is the last hurricane, flood, earthquake that's going to hit. Like, we have to be prepared and we have to be behind this organization. And I know monthly donors are great. If somebody could find it in their heart to squeeze it in their budget to every month give something. And Sara said it, you know, if it's not hurting, we probably haven't done what we really need to do. And you need to be uncomfortable when you give sometimes, but the Lord will give it back tenfold. I promise. Every time in my life that I've been challenged to give, the Lord gives it back.
That's right. That's right.
Well, very good. And then one last question. All the fires you see on the forest fires everywhere in California and stuff like that. You guys, you're out there too. You got people out there too.
Right. Yes. We have people out there too. And I think, gosh, don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure I was overhearing a conversation the other day, but a lot of the water that is either donated to Convoy of Hope or we are able to purchase at a discounted price is actually in California. So it's already there, which is great because it doesn't need to come here to go back there. You know, it's there already, which is awesome because, man, what a mess. That Caldor fire. I mean, I feel like there's always one burning, but I was specifically reading about that one yesterday, and it's already bigger than the size of Chicago.
Man, I tell you what, when you look at that and think about all the homes and businesses, think about all the animals, everything that's being destroyed. Jan and I were talking about going to Lake Tahoe next year, and you're thinking about now that area on both sides is just being destroyed. And think about all the people for Labor Day that was going to be at Lake Tahoe.
Oh, man.
And so it's just a really terrible thing. These forest fires, these things are just hard to control and things. So thank you for doing that. And I tell you what, I think we're running out of time, and we'll be back next Wednesday at 10 a.m. And please remember Convoy of Hope, and please pray for our country.
Dream. 1, 2, 3. Can I get a hoorah from a patriot like me?